Doesn't matter.
Yeah. All right. It's hard running that.
Do you want to MC? You want me to do it?
I'll call you.
I figured you would be.
You wear the shirt.
There you go.
I got my hair split change right along.
Hey, sorry about the bucket.
Oh, man.
They deserve it. That was a terrible game. They should have lost it. They should.
Like a decent enough bedtime.
Does John look like pasta?
And then separate it out.
Does John look like pasta?
I thought that.
I'm ready to go.
So, would you like to
I'll start with
Yeah.
I can start back.
Grab lunch.
I just
Pretty
know that.
much all the throw around the
Yeah.
Good, that last
That's right.
Takes it over.
Miss my rock. And it was one of the ones I could actually breathe. And it's a lot easier than just taking something off.
So he just mentioned his shirt. Yeah, you do it right away.
You could literally
Well, no, we're going to. When did you take her? So pre-COVID. Yeah.
I kind of want to, after I graduate high school, I'm going to cheer to practice position. It's having to do with
Well, that was important.
Yeah.
We know the song. The song.
Also,
We did get to.
No hashtag 0311. They're like, what is the
Rachel
She was cold.
That's pretty cool.
I didn't get a link to anything else.
One for Sunday.
I was just so hilarious.
I'm not prepared.
Color numbers. And then I know those all. I have It's right there in my range.
And you find out that one person does the same thing, and somehow the exact same. Well, if someone did that to me, I'd be like,
So.
yeah. And then just pull out your phone, style.
Well, that's good.
Just be like, what's that beeping? That's me just finding my favorite color. It's in my notes.
I really like
What's your favorite color? I'm
No, it's more like a hashtag.
You gotta have those fingers.
You start doing that. People will not want to be It's the best way to lose friends.
Like the
What kind of shoes?
Strong people.
What did I walk
What's your favorite color?
Yeah.
It's like, oh, you need.
Yeah.
I mean, that's like a different Yeah, what's it, we do need to ask.
We did find out why he's scared of birds.
Wait, where is he?
Well, not really. I can see it. I can go judge.
Mom.
It's like 30, 20, 50, 255, 30. Racing a super rush class. You went over in one class. When you get to full war,
I mean, I was here for all.
war is like a fun part.
I actually think
We don't like.
We need to get her
All right, everybody. Have a seat.
Online.
Okay.
Remember, the front row is evil.
The front row is evil. You don't want the front row. Do we need microphones for YouTube? Or is it not
just be loud.
It'll be you're doing most of the talking. That's fine.
You move it closer.
Oh, you're live.
Yeah. Wow. Hello. Comparison, you like it? Sorry, nothing compared to say.
Mhm.
Can you hear me, internet?
Yeah.
Good. All right. Thanks for coming, everybody. I'm Nate. I'm on the search committee that is thrilled to have John here from Pennsylvania, Circa, Ohio, or en route from Ohio. Not Circa, that means date. Right, I was wrong. And tonight we hope to be just kind of fun and informal. The proposed agenda that John and I crafted about 30 seconds ago is that we'll do some Q&A time here, and then at the end we'll just kind of let you guys mingle and get to know John a little bit, and then we'll kick you out and go home because it's Friday night. John will be back on Sunday, of course, and there's another Q&A session at 11:30 for the whole congregation. So you guys are special because you're just youth and parents of youth, or whoever wants to be here online. But there'll be the big congregational Q&A on Sunday. So, John, you're here.
Yeah.
We're glad.
Thank you.
Do you want to give us just a little bit of the John backstory, and then we'll kind of open it up for some questions?
Yeah. I was just talking to the youth leaders about this. I was brought into youth ministry against my will. I didn't want to do it. I wanted nothing to do with it because I was an arrogant jerk. And then ended up at a church where I had done some youth ministry, just to get some experience. I ended up going to a church in Illinois and met with the associate pastor there. And I had talked to Jackie about it and said, "Look, I just want you to know I'm going to go and ask how I can help. But if he says anything about youth ministry, I'm just going to say no. Like, absolutely not. I've done it. I'm done." And I went to talk with this guy. His name was Jared Smith. And I said, "Hey, Jared, I just want to know, like, we want to be able to help and serve the church. Is there something I can do?" And Jared said, "Would you like to help out with the youth group?" And I said, "Absolutely." And in my head, I went, "No." Right? Like, that's not what you want to do. And then he said, like, "Are you sure that's something you really want to do?" And I said, "Yep." And in my head, I went, "No." Right? And so it was bizarre. And I went back to our apartment on campus at Trinity and just told Jackie, I was like, "So remember that conversation we had?" So Jared said, "Do you want to do this?" And the words that shot out of my mouth were "absolutely." And she went, "Huh?" So in that moment, kind of talking through it, he determined that was a leading of the Holy Spirit. And so we were just going to pursue it as far as it went. And I got to help out, and then I started realizing more and more and more, oh man, I actually really enjoy this. This is something I want to keep doing. And by the time I told her about 2 years in, I was like, "Hey, I think full-time youth is what I'm called to do." She said, "Yeah." I was waiting for you to say something like that. Because it just became evident that it's something that I love. And so I cannot imagine doing anything else.
So far, your progression until you actually changed your Gmail account to reflect your job title.
When did I change that?
Because, I don't know if you want to tell your email address to all of the internet, but it does have a reference to your job title in there.
Yeah, you can email me if you want. It's johntheyouthpastor@gmail.com. And I've stuck with it. So that was when I came on staff at Chapel. So that was probably 12 years ago.
It's too bad now it's going to have to be John, associate pastor, student, and families. But other than that,
Yeah, I might just stick with it. All the John Gardner ones were taken.
okay, fair enough.
So that's me.
Anything else about you that we should know?
I grew up east of Cleveland, Ohio, and then I'm currently living about a half hour north of Pittsburgh, a little town called Beaver Falls, Pennsylvania. If you've ever heard of Geneva College, we are right down the street from it. It's where I went to college. It's where I met Jackie the very first day of freshman orientation, and fell in love with her immediately, and she fell in love with me over a long time. I got friend zoned 3 times, and still married. So that's so that was, and we've been married since December of 2005.
Good job on being persistent.
Yeah. Yep. There are a lot of good stories to follow up that one if you want to talk more about that.
So some not very important questions. What's your favorite professional sports team?
I like all the Cleveland sports teams. So I'm a Browns fan, Indians
Sorry.
fan, Cavs fan, Buckeyes fan. So today was fun.
What's your count?
I know you. I don't know why the Cleveland sports team is named the Cavaliers.
I strained my calf last year. Oh,
So it's
Exactly.
Yeah. It wouldn't be the first time a calf has fallen short in a situation.
what's the strangest thing you've ever eaten?
So, when I was at Trinity, I had sort of an intro class, just to kind of get used to seminary. And one of the friends I made there was Kenyan, and he came from a small village where every year they would every family would take a goat and milk that goat into a vat in the middle of the town, and would let that sort of bake in the sun for about a year. And they would continuously milk this. Yes, they would continuously milk all their village goats into this vat. And at the end of the year, as a sign of thanks, they would bring that same goat that they had milked and they would slit its throat and bleed it into the vat and then let that bake further. And I asked, this is like a delicacy, like for you guys? He's like, yeah, like it's an honor. And I was like, do you have any? And he was like, are you willing to eat it? And I was like, yeah, like let's go. And everybody else in my cohort thought I was crazy. So that's number one. I don't remember what it's called, but it's goat milk and blood. Wow, it was nasty.
Well, was it good?
It smelled worse than it tasted.
Well, that doesn't say much.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah.
So that wasn't prepped. That was well beyond my wildest dreams. What's number two? Cheetos? I mean,
no, there's a thing called a 1,000-year-old egg, or a balut, which is a Korean fermented egg that still has like the chicken in it, like all the parts. And
you set a high bar, my friend.
yeah. It's all ask people that, be like, "What's the grossest thing you've ever eaten?" They're like, "A hot dog." All right. So
I see some fun games in your youth ministry future.
I know how to find stuff.
What's the most exotic place that you visited?
Well, it's exotic. We lived in Scotland for 4 months as a study abroad, working with a church there. And so that was the most exotic place I visited for a long time. But yeah, that was fun. I picked up a little bit of an accent, and I was addicted to tea by the time I came back. So that has slowly faded.
Sean Connery accent when you were done? Like, could you do that impression? Would you like to do it right now on the spot?
I could tell you a great Sean Connery joke.
If you'd like to.
What time does Sean Connery wake up to watch Wimbledon?
I'm not sure.
10-ish.
10-ish. I don't know what to do with that one. Okay, let's open it up for questions.
Go for it.
So yes, joking aside, actually, we'd like to open it up to you guys because you didn't come to just watch me ask John nonsensical questions. But thank you for humoring me. Of course.
What do you want to know?
What is your favorite color? And if you can give the exact hex code.
I do not know the hex code.
Oh, okay.
Orange, particularly this one right here.
Oh, okay.
Like Broncos orange?
No. If Broncos orange and Browns orange are the same color, I'm sure. Yep, orange.
First question, how do you sort of educate yourself or keep in touch with the ideas that teens and once they're out of high school, the ideas that they're going to be encountering?
Two ways. I read a lot of books, particularly books on culture. And then I've also used Walt Mueller as a resource. He has a website. If you're a parent, CPYU, the Center for Parent and Youth Understanding, that just consistently updates with really wise, peer-reviewed research articles on youth culture. And so he is a treasure trove of information for that. And then conferences, youth ministry conferences are really helpful for that as well. But even more than that, if there's something that crosses my path, a lot of times I'll just ask a kid, hey, what is this? And depending on their reaction, which sometimes is, oh, it's like, nope, never mind. You don't have to tell me. Based on that reaction, I'll go look it up.
So,
Yeah.
sorry, can I have a follow-up?
Yeah.
How do you teach kids or talk through, especially if maybe they haven't been exposed to some of these ideas yet, how are you talking through some of that in lieu of kind of preparing them for facing what will be coming down the pipeline, what they can find on the internet, all of that stuff?
Mm-hmm. It's funny because even mentioning this guy's name is proof that this concept can exist. But before Mark Driscoll went insane as a pastor, he had a framework for viewing culture that was receive, reject, redeem. And so now even Mark Driscoll is somebody who we can receive the good things, right? The common grace elements of what he brought to the table, models and just the integrated truth and beauty of what God puts in everything, whether it's science, history, math, culture, right? All these sort of beautiful things that God integrates. So we receive what's good and reflects what's beautiful. We reject those things that are inherently against the gospel, and we take steps to redeem the culture that we can. And so that's been a framework that I've used for youth group kids for anything from ads, right, just commercials, or social media, or whatever it is that they take in.
So do you do that on I guess, are you doing that when you're in conversation with kids and it's coming up, or are you actively saying, here's what you're gonna see, let's talk about that?
Both.
Yeah.
Both. So in conversation, I found one of the things that my current youth group kids are aware of is the phrase, hey, you know what that song's about? And they always go, oh, no, right? You're going to ruin it, aren't you? Maybe. So in conversations, but also I've done what we call culture nights, where we take a topic. So we've done one on the history and culture of Halloween, right? Just because every October that question comes up, different families have different views, different opinions. Where's it come from? How do we take what's good, reject what's not? How can we view it and lovingly treat other brothers and sisters free of commercials and see some old ones that, iconic ones, but then also talk through how much advertising is out there. We've done, and as things come around, right? Election years, we've talked about campaign ads. We've talked about, just things that are sort of consistently part of the rhythm of their life. And I'll ask, hey, I've chosen this culture night. What do you guys want to do next time? Because when they have a choice, they tend to retain more of the information of things that we've talked about. So I'm open to just saying, give me one for next week or next month. What do you want to do? So, and then I get to study it, which perpetuates that very continuous learning.
Well, then, so I've gotten to interact with you, so I have some inside knowledge, just because, this is, the 10th time I've interviewed you now.
Yeah.
So,
All of them were lovely.
okay. It's nice to not be on Zoom for a change.
Oh, man.
But in your structure, you have your formal youth group night, Sunday nights, and then you have your midweek night, Wednesdays, where you have the opportunity to do some of these other things.
Mhm.
So you also have, an Ask Anything night.
Mhm.
That is one of your favorites. Yes. I don't know if you want to elaborate on that.
Yeah, we've done a sort of midweek that changes up. We've had a system where the first week of the month is an Ask Anything night, and it is quite literally show up and ask whatever you want. It can be about current events. It can be about biblical text. It can be just about, what's your favorite color, right? Things like that. Whatever, just as an opportunity to keep learning stuff, right? And to grow with that together and to not be afraid of questions.
And so I imagine that dovetails into culture quite a bit too, because
Mm-hmm.
that's often on their mind.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So we'll do Ask Anything night and Culture night. We'll do a board game night or game night. And then usually a stupid movie night, which is always a good time. So I share Jeff's love of absurd, terrible movies. So, yeah.
Can you talk a little bit more about your plan for ministry? Just like you're talking about Sunday nights and Wednesday nights, just for those of us who haven't really heard the spiel of just what you envision.
Yeah. My initial plan, I was just talking with the youth leaders about this, is to listen to them and watch what's been going on. I don't want to come in and immediately change everything with some sort of unilateral, hey, this worked in Western Pennsylvania, so it's got to work in Colorado. I think that's arrogant. And so my plan will be kind of watch how things develop, to listen to the leadership, to listen to parents, to work together with the staff, to work together with the elders, and kind of, as a church community, figure out what's best and the way to slowly move to that. I don't think it's fair to kind of whiplash a group as large as this youth group is. I don't want them to feel like, hey, we're doing this. No, wait, hang on. Next week we're going to do this. No, hang on. I did that wrong. So my plan right now is a lot of listening. And in the meantime, even on Wednesday night, like talking with the leaders about the relationships that they already have with students, to be able to answer questions and to pray for them and do that. I don't want to come in and say stop. So if that seems like a cop out, I can understand that. But I also, I don't know, a church culture and a youth group has their own culture, and I want to work in that in a way that's helpful.
So I guess just maybe if I'm thinking that it sounds like plan to have more than one weekly night with different focuses, is that right?
Mm-hmm.
So say if we went with Sundays and Wednesdays, one night would be more of like a discipleship, and another night would be more outreach. Is that, or where does your focus lie when you look at those different gatherings?
I don't think I'd put them at odds with each other, but I think there's a night where it's gathering as a whole group around the preached text of Scripture, and then an opportunity to reflect on that in smaller groups, to ask questions and to learn that. And that can have elements of fellowship, fun, playing games, right? All those types of things. And then, I am not anti-fun. I think it's a very important part of a ministry to just be able to build friendships. And so, again, it's going to come down to limit things, but that's traditionally what I've done. We've had a Sunday school model because the youth group that I'm currently serving, it's also combined middle and high school. And so there has been a time where if the high schoolers are with the middle schoolers, I want them to start forging relationships as disciplers, to get to reach out to them and say, hey, I just want you to know I'm here for you, I'll pray for you, and kind of move in that direction. But that also means that they will have time as senior hires where they can go as deep as they want, and they are served instead of served and serving at the same time. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how would that happen when they're always mixed together? I love our youth sponsors. They split when they do small groups. But there's different needs.
Mm-hmm.
Senior high have different needs than middle schoolers.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a time where they used to meet separately. And now the group is big. And they do separate for small groups into different areas, and they have wonderful youth sponsors. I just love them.
Mm-hmm.
And they do an excellent job. But you wouldn't want to just come in and start making changes like that right away. That might be
Absolutely.
down the future, that might be something to look at.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And when I'm talking about the older kids working with and serving the younger kids, I mean it more in terms of even within the game time, even within just times of fellowship, to kind of move away from to take opportunities, not all the time, but to take opportunities to just reach out and let them know that there's somebody there that's looking out for them, who's still a student, because they may have questions that they're more willing to ask older students that they wouldn't ask adults. But no, it wouldn't be a. I already talked to the youth leaders about this. The groups that they have, I have no intention of coming in and saying stop.
So I have another question. How would you build unity? Because there's been kids that have come in new, and I felt that it's been too cliquish. Nobody's has said, made them feel welcome, so they no longer come. And how would you fix that? How would you build unity within the youth group?
I think that's part of the job of working with the leaders to identify people as they're coming in and making sure that they're met and welcomed, that they know their name, that they're invited back. And at the same time, if those leaders already have strong relationships with the older kids in the youth group, bringing them with them to do that, to be a welcoming voice and encouragement that's a part of that. And that is, I think while that is a system that I've employed, it is primarily continually leaning on the work of the Spirit through the leaders and through the kids to be prayerful as they approach youth group nights, to move in that direction, because the best of our efforts and systems, we can do things that are effective, we can do things that work, but more often than not, what it takes is being sensitive to that nudge that says, go over there. You gotta talk to that kid. Right? Reach out, be willing to be awkward, that type of thing.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, I'm Miriam Carlson, and I'm reading a text from Mary Hicks, and she wants to know how you engage with parents and support them in their role of discipling their kids.
Mm-hmm. I think it's I think it's primarily through opportunities for fellowship, right? Have opportunities to, at the risk of sounding needy, to go over and have some dinner, right? To have people over as families, and to engage people as whole families, to work with elders alongside the individuals and families that they're shepherding, to kind of work as a team to do that. I'm trying to think of how strongly I can put this. I despise the notion of taking the place of a parent. I'm one, because I think it's unbiblical, and two, because I'm not smart enough or wise enough to do it. And I think it takes a willingness from myself and the leaders to engage parents, and I think it takes a willingness from parents to engage with those questions, and to know that, there's to know that there are things that can sadden a youth leader to hear, but not to be shocked or stigmatized by that. I think there's hesitation sometimes from a youth pastor, because I don't want to step on any toes, and so there's resistance there. I think there can be hesitation for parents to say, I don't want it to feel like my kid's going to be labeled or stigmatized or met with disdain. I think that's a tragic way of seeing the nature of parents and youth pastors and youth workers. So, and it's every church culture has a different set of challenges to that. And so I think whatever is put in place needs to be sensitive to the particular challenges that are going on at Grace, and not assume that they're going to be the same challenges at any other church. Does that help?
I think so.
Yeah.
So Matt, are comments enabled? Do you know? I just was checking the YouTube feed to see if the comments are.
They're not, because it's set up for kids.
Got it.
Oh, she says, okay.
All right. Okay. Yep.
I was going to throw it out there
Great
to the massive online audience.
There's 7 the last time I looked.
I just checked too, and so,
Oh.
but apparently,
Text Matt with your questions. Or Miriam, if you're-
honestly, anybody that you know, text them. Sorry that it can't be on YouTube.
I have a question.
Please.
What about Grace, Longmont, etc.? What are you finding appealing that would get you excited about coming here? It can be church specific or the two of you or whatever.
I mean, we don't have all night either, but.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, broadly, I appreciate the distinctives of the Evangelical Free Church. I love that setup. I love the notion of unity in essential things and charity in particulars. I think that's a great way to work together as a church, and I think it serves the youth group in the way that they're going to come with different questions about things, and it's okay to say, hey, actually, this person over here on the other side of the room disagrees with me, but they're my brother and sister in Christ, and this is within a reasonable, bit of disagreement. They're not a heretic. We just disagree. That's okay. I don't know. I appreciate the sense of welcome that we felt at each stage of the process, whether it was search committee, meeting the staff, the what do you call it, Luke? The council dinner that we had, right, with the hospitality committee, and just meeting people and hearing that. I think getting to meet the youth group kids on Wednesday was great. Just getting to starting to see who they are and what they're all about. What am I missing? Oh yeah, there you go. Yeah, I was talking about this with the youth leaders. One of the things that really drew me to the church was the job description, because it was not about entertainment and programs and numbers. It was about depth and discipleship and working alongside parents, right, and nurturing and building faith to last. And I will just tell you, I have read a lot of awful job descriptions, particularly for youth ministry positions. And so there was a sense of reading it where actually I remember I finished reading it and I went, like, yeah, like this is, and with that, having conversations with with current youth leaders and what they're already doing, the love they already have for this youth group, the love that parents have for their kids, the love that the staff has for families, and the elders for their people. I think it's pretty exciting to come into.
How have you felt led that you need to leave where you are to come to a different church?
It's not. It has nothing to do with leaving my current church on any bad terms, which I love, and in some cases it's hard to do in youth ministry. I have a wonderful session of elders and a great group of kids and parents, and a camp ministry that's going to be hard to say goodbye to. And where we really started looking was in the current denomination that I'm in. I can't be ordained. Ordination is not a possibility, and that wasn't possible even in the Free Church until a few years ago when they changed their distinctive about their millennial view. And so when that finally changed, that day, I looked at Jackie and I went, "Oh, like we got a shot, right? Like there's a church that will take us because we are kind of doctrinal mutts. Like we're all over the place." And so it was partly the pursuit of ordination, and then just looking through different jobs, this was the one that seemed to fit. And so my current church understands that, and they're thrilled, which is good. I don't want to be in a church that's thrilled to see me leave, but they understand. They understand.
How big is your current youth group and what's the age range?
We were usually 20 to 23. That's not the age range. And we go from when you finish your 6th grade year, you can start that summer. And then when you graduate as a senior, you can stay through that summer. And so it's a mixed group. And I also have the wildest ratio of students to leaders, I think, of any youth group I know, because I think we currently have about 22 kids and 11 leaders.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, ranging from our youngest leader is 20, and our oldest leader just turned 76.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Well, I'll brag on you. So we've delved into this in our interview process, and I can tell this is very much an intentional thing on your part. It's not just a happy accident that you have 11 volunteers.
Mm-hmm.
It's a strength of yours, and you've been working, and you're really committed to having different types of volunteers, from men, women, young, old, married, single, so that there's always somebody that you can connect with. I'm just parroting what you told me before.
Yeah. As of 3 months ago, I finally got a complete set. I was so excited, right? Ages, genders, singles, married. I have one from everywhere. So it's kind of fun. So, and man, they're great. They're such a good group. So it's nice to know that if I do leave, that they're there. And so if you think you are too old, right, to serve, I will hunt you down. Right? So just be ready.
You'll watch out.
So for all the YouTubers out there, thanks to Pastor Matt. The chat is enabled now. So if you have a question, type it into YouTube, and Matt will see it and flag it. And then if you're in the room physically, you can ask another question right now.
I was out for a little bit, so maybe nobody's asked this, but it kind of again is piggybacking off of my earlier questions. So one of the things that I think is really and highly influencing our culture at large and youth culture is just kind of a Western individualistic understanding of who I am, right? So I guess, yeah, like, are you giving kids a framework to see that kind of thing? Like, is that something that when you're thinking about how to talk to them, like, is that type of thing, like, this is the air that you're breathing in our culture. Let's look at that and see it for what it is, and then be able to analyze that and live in that and be able to think through that.
Yes. Yeah. Even to the degree that one of my primary goals is making sure that anybody who is involved in a youth group is consistently encouraged to attend Sunday morning worship at Grace. I think that's essential. Or if not Grace, if they have another church tradition and church family that they're already involved, that they go. Because I think that's what starts to cut through that self-centeredness that can be produced in adults as well as kids, right? I think I love preaching the prophets, and the prophets have a way of cutting through individualism, basically like being repeatedly punched about your individualism and the way that you treat family, the way that you treat the poor, the way that you treat those who are around you, and just shot after shot after shot against greed and the pursuit of power, selfish pursuit of power that comes with that. And I talk with one question that I ask, and I stole this from Tim Keller, is with a lot of the older students, I'll say, okay, so how many of you, when you are out of high school, are hoping to have some really high level of independence? And most of them will raise their hand, and I'll say, okay. And how many of you hope after high school to be really, really invested in community? And then they all raise their hand, and Keller says, those are in contradiction with each other. And usually they're thinking independence, maybe financial independence or independence, moving out of the house, that type of thing. But just this idea of Chap Clark, I think it says the goal is not to move from dependence to independence after high school. It's to move from dependence to redependence, and dependence on the family that God offers through the local church, right? And bringing families together into a larger unit. And so I think the chief way of saying, go to church, and I love youth group. Youth group's not church. Go be with, I'll talk about my group as our weird little family, but we're not the weird big family. Right? This is a part of the bride. But the bride of Christ in corporate worship on Sunday morning it's different. It's meant to be.
And I think you touched on a lot of elements there, but dig in a little bit more on your philosophy on successfully launching and graduating youth into the broader life of the church.
Mm-hmm. It's hard. It's hard. That's part one of the philosophy. It is a hard thing to do. I think that is what requires so much more communication with parents, elders, other staff. And I didn't get to say this to the leaders, but it's one of the things that I say to youth leaders a lot is if a kid graduates out of youth group, right, however you want to call it, the kid moves out of youth group, and there's somebody in the church that is discipling them more than me and who they love more than me, great. I'm not possessive over that. I do not need to be the primary discipler of every student in this church, nor can I be. And so I was asked about mission trips, right? Working with mission trips. I think kids are served well by doing mission trips intergenerationally. I think students are served by taking part in ministries alongside other adults who are not youth leaders within the context of the local church. Serving the worship team, working even to talk about the direction of the church and thinking through those things. Like any opportunity I have to say, go over there and meet them, right, is gonna help, because otherwise, if I'm it, first off, and secondly, then when they're done with me, they're done with the church, and that's awful. So a lot of it is when a student comes to me and says, "Hey, you've probably never dealt with this before, but this is something I'm dealing with." Having relationships and fellowship with other adults in the church to say, "Hey, go talk to them," right? They've been through it. They'll help you walk through it. They know, I'm here to help in terms of what the scriptures say. How does God speak to this? What's true? How can we work together with this? But it's my own relationships with other adults in the church, and the staff and the elders' relationships with those adults in the church that build those connections that are going to keep people hopefully in the life of the church, which is not a silver bullet, because sometimes you build those relationships, you work as hard as you can on building those relationships, and they walk away, which is hard. That's what makes it hard.
Question online. The essence of the question is, what do you do specifically to help students make the transition from teenage years to adulthood?
If it sounds like I'm repeating myself, I can understand that. But working with parents, working with staff, working with the other ministries of the church to have a foundation where they're already feeling like they're a part of that. And I don't want them to feel like, well, you've been a senior for 2 months now, so just they know they still have leaders that we're still willing to talk, right? That we're still willing to work through those things. But with that is trying to move them into the larger life of the church. And so there's a responsibility on the youth group leadership team to not drop them like an anvil. And there is a response of the adult-specific ministries of the church, including Sunday morning worship, to not receive them like an anvil. Say, well, this is, here you go, figure your life out now. So, does that make sense?
Yeah, that wasn't my question, but
Okay. Yeah.
If that person wants to expand on it, they can.
Sure.
Kind of on the other side of that, with young students coming up into youth group, unless I'm mistaken, I think our all was 6th graders come up, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it used to be that several years ago, 5th and 6th graders kind of had their own sort of program, because I think that view was that, they were kind of older than the younger elementary kids, but not quite ready to enter the big youth group. I guess my question is, either for parents or kids who feel like maybe their up and coming 6th graders are young, either for that age or whatever, one, would you consider maybe bringing into the discussion more of the model that you have currently with 7th graders coming in? Do you see the benefit of that? Or also, how do you bridge the huge gap between an 11, 12-year-old and an 18, 19-year-old in your ministry?
Mm-hmm. I think it's a discussion that needs to be had with the current leaders to see how that might work, to play that through. I think no matter which age it begins, there's that little bit of hesitation and I don't know if I'm ready for this. And that challenge is actually something that I embrace. A little bit of like, oh, you're, maybe a little nervous to come in. Okay, we'll meet you there. We'll try to meet you there, and that's where those working with the older kids, right, and working with the leaders. I think part of that is, I was talking with Heidi about this, right? Also making sure that if you're an introvert, you feel welcome. Because, and part of that is training leaders who feel like, I could never be a youth leader, I'm an introvert. Yeah, you can. Right? Because I'm scary, right? It's this big extroverted, let me teach you, right? Just running after people. And so I think there are different ways you could approach it. Again, it would be a discussion I want to have with the leaders about how it's worked in the past and what seems to be going on. I also think I want to encourage those kids as young as they are. If there's content that's being preached or things that are being discussed that they feel like is over their head, then part of the Christian life is learning to say, can you just tell me what that means? Before they learn pretense, right? And so just like, yeah, if you are younger, I want you to be able to meet in your small group after the sermon's over, and maybe talk to another kid on the way, or talk to an adult and say, I don't know what this means. And okay, well, we're going to explain it to you in a way that makes sense, and that might take some time, but that's worth it. So I'm willing to be a little over their head and past where they feel comfortable, so that they can try to seek wisdom and good counsel from other people in the church. It's a good habit to create.
Hey, John, I think what's behind the questions is a little bit of history of like transition type seminars and gatherings for specific types of groups.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's kind of what's behind the senior question, and even the younger kids question and so forth. So the question that kind of followed up from that first one was, do you have any experience or history doing that sort of thing where it's something specific for that kind of group, whether it's a senior transition out or a middle school transition in?
Yes, I have. I've done. There's no good term for it because I hate the phrase young adult. But we've done some groups with that, Bible studies and fellowship groups and things like that, that have been bridges to joining other small groups, or sometimes they're a small group that gets created out of that becomes a Bible study. Jackie and I have led a bunch of those and love that. And actually, had a good conversation with Pastor James about wanting to work with him on milestones and transition out of the kids ministry and youth ministry. And so he'd be my go-to person to try to find ways to make that transition effective, because he's been doing it for a while, and so I want to try to work with him on that too. So yes, I've done ministries like that, and I would love to keep doing ministries like that. I think James would probably tell you that there's part of that transition that's hard. No matter what, you can try to make it as easy as possible. But part of that transition is just difficult, and something together with him, I think would be where I want to start.
A few more?
You talked a bit about how the youth group kind of has to address the wider culture of the world, and especially in high school and whatnot, there's a lot of emphasis placed on like romantic relationships and how that's like the most important thing. And so how would you plan to address that for the youth group? Would you have some sort of like dedicated, here's how relationships are, like biblically speaking, or what?
I would talk about a biblical view of creation, a biblical view of marriage, a biblical view of singleness, and then make sure that there's room for parents to have conversations with their kids about that too. I've joked at times where people have said like, "Are you ever going to talk about like a biblical view of dating? Which one? Like Ruth?" No. Right? Samson? No. Right? Right. And so what I tend to teach is just broader wisdom on it. Right. And that the call to singleness is a call to faithfulness. The call to marriage is a call to faithfulness. And that persists. I tend to recoil a little bit when I hear things framed in terms of life stages, right? Because it feels like a ladder which you must advance in order to prove some specific step, right? And you know, church culture can talk about this, right? Where, you know, so when are you gonna get married? Then when are you gonna have kids, right? Well, you only have one, right? And you have another kid, right? Well, then you're gonna be outnumbered, right? And then when are you gonna do this? 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 And then it can just promote a culture of competition instead of a culture of unity and diversity of gifts and experiences. And to say, you know, there are biblical examples of faithful people who had children. There are biblical examples of faithful people who didn't. There are biblical examples of faithful people who remained single. There's just, I don't tend to address it as, here's what the culture does and here's where it's wrong. It tends to be, here's what the Bible says about what's beautiful and true. That we're created in the image of God to be and make disciples. And that's the core of our identity. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, we know you had your hand up for a while.
Yeah, it's going back to, since I didn't mention my name. Yes, I did work in youth ministries for 12 years. For the sixth graders, middle school, that was coming up, we used to go snatch them from their house. We had their parents' permission.
Okay, good.
Take them out to breakfast. The senior high would do this, and we'd take them out to breakfast. They didn't have a problem after that coming to the group. They were so loved on. It was incredible.
I forgot to tell you that we blindfolded.
That's awesome.
Start with that.
Do it.
Yep.
And we had fun back then. Youth group was fun. Taught who Jesus was, you know, taught what the Bible was. Man, did we have fun. So, because you can be a Christian and have fun.
Amen.
And
What kind of
then-
church is this?
It's a fun kind.
I don't want to go to a church that doesn't have fun. Anyway, so my daughter, she said she had a lot of fun.
Yeah.
So, for seniors, we would have a Bible study. When they graduated, I don't know what we called it. We probably called it something like young adults.
Mm-hmm.
So, But yeah, we did that for a while. There was many.
Mhm.
So, and that went for a while.
Mhm.
So those were the kind of things that we did.
Yeah. Well, I think there could be a false dichotomy that says if you are pro discipleship, you are anti fun. One of my favorite quotes is from an old reformer, Heinrich Bullinger, who said, "God has in no place forbidden mirth." Right? There is no biblical prescription against having fun.
I bet that sounded great in German too.
Yeah, right? Right, with his giant beard. Right? So he, and I think that's true. I think Christians should be deeply serious about deeply serious things. And they should also be better at having fun than anybody else. So.
Along those lines, what do you do for relaxation? What's your favorite way to spend a date night with your wife?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Moving out of philosophy of ministry and into
Sure.
who you are.
Yeah. We will try any new type of food that we can get our hands on. If there's a particular culture whose food we have not tried yet, we will hunt it down and pursue it. So we love going out to eat. I love to cook. Jack's really good at baking. We play a lot of board games. We watch a lot of movies. We just enjoy having people over for dinner, conversation, going out. We golf poorly. I said to the youth group, I like being the guy who, if you've never golfed before, you can golf with me because I don't take it that seriously. So if you want to learn, I won't yell at you. So yeah, am I missing anything? Yeah.
So you talked about that you and Jackie led a small group, but you're the candidate, but how does Jackie serve alongside you? I mean, I don't have a strong opinion either way, but I just wonder, what has she done in your youth group?
So for the first year at Chapel, we were it in terms of youth leadership, and she's good. She's good leader, thoughtful, good at one-on-one conversations. And then she became a middle school math teacher. And she said, I'm with middle school students all day, every day. I don't particularly long to do that on weekends. And so she's, I don't know, do you want to talk about it or do you want me to talk about it?
I guess.
You can switch seats with me if you want.
No, that's okay. I support the youth ministry by supporting John. That's my husband. And I would be looking into ways to serve the church as a whole. Like I would be a committed church member, but not necessarily at youth group events, but I would love to see other ways to get involved. What else does the church have going on? And small groups would be great. We could have, that's where our experience together has been for many years. As long as we've been married.
Almost 20.
We've done that together. So.
We always need another drummer. Nate can teach you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Pretty good.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. How have you addressed in the past, or have you dealt with this with gender dysphoria or same-sex attraction?
Mm-hmm. Honestly, and I try to be as straightforward as possible without being crass. I think there's a difference between being honest and intentional and being crude. And I've talked through. I've done a series on even when we did our series on singleness marriage. the first thing I did was gender. Gender is as creational, and talking through those types of things. When it comes to any topic like that, particularly controversial topics, I tend to charge into them rather than run away from them. So it's, and if there are, no, that's good. That's enough. Mhm.
I have a question here. Do you have a life verse or a vision statement for your life?
Yes, I do. Jackie knows exactly where I'm going with this. I tell my kids my life verse is Numbers 31:34. Yeah, and Numbers 31:34 says 61,000 donkeys. That's it. I'm not opposed to life verses. I'm okay with them. I am opposed to life verses that are out of context and sometimes prettied up in a way that doesn't make any sense. So if your life verse is about how a beautiful thing will happen in your lifetime, and it's in the context of because I'm going to exile you and rip you away from your family.
You can just say Jeremiah 29.
Jeremiah 29:11 would be
We've talked
one.
about it here many times.
Yeah, Jeremiah 29:11 would be one. I appreciate Philippians 4:13, and it has nothing to do with basketball.
I do intend to do a preaching series soon on ruining treasured verses of the Bible.
Yeah, yep, I did one. I called it just out of context.
Yeah.
I don't have a particular life verse. What I love is the beautiful way in which the stories of the Old Testament point to who Jesus is and what he's going to do, and point to who God's people are and where they are. And so I tend to take things on a whole story level rather than a verse by verse level. I'm not opposed to it. If you have a life verse, fine. Right, that's okay.
It is actually on the wall behind you.
Yep. Plans to prosper you, not to harm you, and exile you. Eventually. Yep. All right.
There's one more question.
Last call.
It was actually for Jackie, and the question is, do you plan to teach when you come here? Is that something you plan to pursue teaching when you get here?
That is a difficult question for me. I'm in the middle of considering career opportunities. So I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
This is a good fresh start for me.
Yeah.
So.
Can you just real quick talk a little bit more about, did you say something about a camp ministry?
Yeah.
And
So
like,
That was on my hit list too. So
Like-
thank you, Abby.
are you excited about bringing some of that here?
yes, I love camps.
I'm passionate about it.
I have exceedingly high standards for camps, because it was 12 years ago, I took my youth group to a camp, and it was terrible. It was really bad. And I talked with the leadership and said, hey, if you're gonna keep doing camps like this, like our youth group's probably not gonna come. And they said, well, why don't you do it? And I said, okay. So then I directed 11 straight summer camps and 10 straight winter camps for that group. And there's such a good group of different leaders from different churches with different gifts, with the goal of, with of course the goal of growing closer to Christ, the goal of growing closer to one another, and also to see the church as bigger than your local church. And so we've had really good relationships with students from other churches, leaders from other churches, kind of banding together and getting to know each other. And those relationships are deep. And so, and also ridiculously fun. I love games. And part of loving board games so much is that every once in a while I will play one and think, I could turn this into a game with, that in our one camp was 120 kids. Right? So how can I take this and turn it into something wild? It's just fun. It's something I love to do. And I love preaching at camps, love being a camp speaker. All that stuff it's just what I love to do. I think it's important. I think it's terrible if it's done poorly. It's great if it's done well.
Another question just came up. When was the last time you shared the gospel with somebody? And when is the last time that the gospel moved you emotionally?
Whew. So, I meet up with a buddy of mine who's a pastor, and we do sermon prep, and we very intentionally have it at this coffee shop where we don't know anybody, and as an opportunity to get to know the baristas who work there. They're a married couple, and I love them, but they're crazy and just very open and very warm. But when it comes to spiritual stuff, very all over the place. The woman came up to me and she said she forgot to bring my sandwich out. She has just guilt-ridden. Oh, I'm so sorry, I forgot it. So and I just said it's okay. I'm fine. I'm not going anywhere. I'm really okay. She just said, no, it's horrible. I'm horrible. It's all this sort of stuff. And I was like, yeah, I forgive you. You don't need to beat yourself up. And she's like, yeah, I'm just really hard on myself. And I was like, yeah, I get that. But if you're the problem, what makes you think you're the solution? And she just kind of went, oh. And she sort of turned around, and I was like, this is why I keep telling you about Jesus. Right? This is why I keep doing it, right? And so it wasn't, and now if you were to die today and stand before, it was just, hey, this is.
And you talked to her about Jesus before.
Yeah. So it's been a long series of conversations, and I finally thought I had enough rapport sort of built up that I could finally go, hey. Right? Just think about this. So that was the last one. What was the second part? The last time the gospel moved?
When is the time the gospel moved you emotionally? I'm not sure what's behind that question, but it's an interesting, provocative question.
No, it's a great question. Whoever wrote that question, good job. I started a series on Revelation, and so just a few weeks ago, I was talking about, we did Revelation 4 and 5, so the throne room in heaven and the worship in heaven. And John preparing the readers to be able to withstand what was happening to them and what was going to happen through the persecution they were about to face. As I'm preaching through, the elders and the four living creatures falling before the throne and crying out about God's holiness and all these sorts of things, and that John is writing this to say, this isn't just the end of the story. This is now. This is the reality now. This is the reality when you worship with your church family. This is the worthiness of the Lion of Judah, is that he's also the Lamb that's slain. And I caught the eye of one of my kids, who she has been through a lot. And she's staring down an uncertain future where she will go through a lot. And just in that moment, the connection of the text to prepare somebody for what they're already going through and what they will go through. And it was just a sort of fleeting glance in her direction. And my kids can catch it because like in the middle of phrases, and then Jesus did, like that kind of thing. And they could see it like, oh, something hit him. And it was just that. It's that is for all who believe. And in that moment, it was for her. For everybody in that room in some way, but for her so specifically, it's just say, God's on the throne. You're gonna be okay.
Seems like a good finale to me.
Sure.
Unless anyone's got a question, they just can't live without asking.
And I'll stick around.
If you do, come ask him.
Yeah.
How do you handle clicks?
Question.
Aggressively. One of my favorite strategies is to if there are two people who are very clingy, particularly if they're a couple, one of my favorite things to do is simply to wedge myself in between them as uncomfortably as possible, and then say, and you thought nothing could ever come between you two? So that's a fun one. And then to the point where eventually they'll see me coming and, start moving on the way, like, I'm not dealing with this. Yeah, I like to set up games in a particular way to work against that. I like to set up discussions in a way that works against that. I'm not going to reveal all of my tricks. But in any situation, it's just sometimes it's as simple as you go over there. Right? That's probably the most visceral way that it happens. It's just like, all right, you go talk to them, right? You're related. Go over there, right? So break it up.
I like that.
Yeah, I know you love each other. Get over there. So, and I don't want to just break cliques across friendship lines. I also like doing it across grades, right? So it's not always, you 7th grade girl, go talk to this 7th grade girl. Sometimes it's you go over there and talk to them. Whoa. And they'll love you. It's okay, So sometimes it's gentle, and sometimes it's I forget who was it that said this. Sometimes there's just like a loving hand, patting you on the back, and other times it's going, get over it. Bit of both. It's a good question.
All right. Thank you, John.
Yeah.
Thanks for letting us put you under the microscope.
Mm-hmm.
There's more to come.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine. I'll take it. So, yeah. Thanks, everybody.
Meeting adjourned. Should we pray?
Yeah.
I'm getting hand signals from the senior pastor. You better do it.
Okay.
All right. I'll pray.
All right.
Jesus, thank you so much for this time to be together. Thank you for John and his candor and his honesty and just getting to know him better. We're grateful that he can be here this weekend. We pray that you would bless John as he brings the message on Sunday, and that you would give us wisdom as a congregation as we think about next steps. In your name we pray. Amen.
Thanks all.
So as class president, will you be bringing more recess?